hello, and welcome to another episode of The Portal. Today is a solo cast, a solo show, and I felt like it was really necessary to do kind of an intro video because I recognize that I've kind of hit the ground running with some of this DERO stuff, and I feel like I have left some of you guys wanting for more information as to why this even applies to you and what it even is. First off, I just want to throw a little attention to my background, which is Dark Flower Rejuvenation Pods for Deep Relaxation, which is actually my first NFT project that I haven't finished yet because it's all done hand-done art and guided meditations. So I am obsessed with this art. So I just wanted to put it up there so at least I could look at it because I'm in love. More on that later though. So yeah, DERO. What is DERO? How did this even come into our life? Here we were focusing on law, focusing on sovereignty, and, quote, fighting the tyrannical mandates. Next thing you know, we're over here full blown in the world of DERO and hexagons with keyholes. So what does this even mean, right? For those of you that don't know, I'm Kalina Lux, and my story goes like this. I've always been aware of the PSYOPs and the impending social credit score system and the whole Rockefeller lockstep agenda. And I've really wanted to create solutions considering all my basic needs were met. I live off grid. I have my own, power and water source and food source. So I'm good to go. And what happens when you have your own oxygen mask on? Well, if you're a good person, then you tend to want to help others get theirs on too. So of course I've created not just a YouTube channel, this one that you're watching called The Portal, with all the solutions geared towards, moving ourselves and our whole quanta into new sovereign earth. But I've also created a temple, an actual physical on the earth temple called Tempus Aquaria. And this is a faith-based organization and private membership association basically designed for people like you and me who really want to create solutions for our sovereignty and to become our highest, best expression of ourselves. And we do this by a few different things, right? Off-grid living, obviously, detox, healing, creating solutions around privacy with the upcoming social credit score and the surveillance issues with AI, as well as also discovering and understanding at the deepest levels natural law or God's law, which is dear to my heart. So I got my start by opening up the temple and helping a lot of people keep their blood pristine from the tyrannical mandates. And we as a temple, I helped 1,500 people around the world, and some even heights of that whole, plan demonic. We were helping people fly from very, very strict countries like Germany, Lebanon, Canada, Australia even. So we helped people keep their blood pristine and not have to muzzle their faces while actually traveling around. And after I felt kind of adequately sufficient in that, I was like, okay, that was so stressful. I got caught off guard. It blindsided me from, out of nowhere. I had to do all this work to catch up. And it was a lot. It was a lot of learning and a lot of dedication. And it really burnt me out. So in order to prevent that from happening again, I was like, okay, what is the next thing that I need to start preparing myself and my people for? And that obviously was a social credit score system, and which I've delved into deeply to try to discover solutions to preempt the solutions so that we can step out of harm's way. And it's like a pendulum or like a big ball, like a hammer, right? A ball hammer. I think that's what they're called. And this like wrecking ball comes swinging through to completely annihilate everything of the old world. Meanwhile, we're like way over here, like you can't see, but like way over here and completely out of harm's way. And that's what I feel like knowing these solutions has done. And it's really interesting when we look at how and we compare and contrast the old world with the new sovereign earth. And in the old world, we had to continuously turn towards these higher authorities, quote unquote, to protect us and give us our rights and all those things and govern us. Whereas in the new earth, we are responsible for those things. So we're decreasing the amount of governance forces that these things are trying to control us, right? And simultaneously, we equally have to step it up So we let go of mommy and daddy government and we step up our own self-governance and our own self-possession and responsibility to act and behave in our highest of integrity always. So that's the trade-off, right? And so naturally in my research, I found DERO. And what is DERO? You could call it a cryptocurrency, but it's so much more than that. It is a private smart contract application platform that's completely scalable. So essentially, it's the most private thing that we have in the realm of this planet to date. Like there is nothing more private and encrypted as a technology for transferring finances than DERO. It is the closest thing that we have to actual tangible assets like cash. And I'm going to tell you why in a little bit. And so what does that mean, right? I know a lot of us, we come from the background of like, oh, gold and silver is king and queen, and that cash is essential to keeping our privacy. And you're absolutely right. However, when the controllers of the old world come down and try to take those things from us and try to confiscate the gold and silver or try to outlaw transactions with them like they've done before, or straight up say that cash now is deemed at no value, that everybody has to be on their specific CBDCs, what are we going to do? We cannot simply sit in denial and feel like, oh, they're never going to do that, or I'm still going to operate in, my own cash. You better be an Amish person or a Mennonite, or have a very, very strong little network of a community that you can exchange goods with in a barter system if you really want to do that. And even still, there's going to be situations where you have to interact with the outside world. There's just going to, right? And even somebody like myself who I have all my basic needs met, right? Food, water, power. I would still have to interact with the other external sources for those other things that are actual necessities in life. So is the solution to just, say, screw all digital forms of transactions? Well, chances are, if you are watching this video, you might be already too dependent on technology. You might be already too dependent on your cell phone. Maybe you have a website where you run all your businesses out of, like me. Well, in that way, we're going to have to find some happy medium or some solution. So that's where DERO comes in. DERO is the most encrypted form of technology that we have on the planet. And what do I mean by encrypted? If you're aware of certain cryptos, you might feel like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and those kinds are going to keep you safe. And I've got some heartbreaking news in that regard, my friends and family, that those, in my opinion, are just surveillance technologies designed to track, trace, and surveil you. They are weaponry and probably created, I don't know, I can't prove this, but if I were to guess, they were probably created to kind of trap us, thinking that we were safe, to give us the idea that we are actually anonymous online, a concept that's called PsuedoAnonymity. And what happens when a person believes that they're not being surveilled? They act in their truest way. What happens when you're being surveilled, when you're acting in your truest way? Well, guess what? They're collecting so much data on you that they can now use to socially engineer you, which is what I believe has happened. I believe that they've been collecting hordes of data on each of us, and that they've calculated exactly how to socially engineer us so that we would do the unthinkable, the unfathomable, and the unnatural, which is essentially, which I'll say for, politically correctness here and censorship, I will say that they've gotten us to flip our polarities as humans in ways we would never conceivably do in a normal, organic setting in nature. Now, you can extrapolate what I mean by that. However, DERO helps us because it is a solution to this problem that we have with the internet. Right now, all of the data that they're mostly collecting is financially involved, right? It has to do with finances. And so they're surveilling our transactions because where we put our money is what we value. So DERO solves this by ensuring that all of your transactions are in fact private. That is not the case with Bitcoin. That is not the case with any crypto, with the exception of maybe Monero and Pirate Chain. And furthermore, it can't be cracked. So anytime that you make a transaction, even now, sometimes with cash, right? Sometimes if you use a little card code or whatever, like a discount code or whatever, or facial recognition, they can track you, right, with what you're paying with, even with cash. So anytime that you're using your debit card, your credit card, sometimes cash, and definitely any crypto with the exception of those three I just mentioned, DERO, Monero, Pirate Chain, your transactions are being logged into a global ledger. And it's for the purposes of social engineering and marketing. Now, how do we solve this, right? Well, we can turn to privacy protocols like Monero and Pirate Chain, which basically utilize privacy protocols like obfuscation or ZK snarks, which are just cryptography protocols to hide that information, right? And the problem with those is that those, while very good protocols, they're still written in plain text. And what plain text is like, you can read this here. It says dark flower. That's plain text. If I wrote a message to you that said, hi, I love you, and I just wrote the words, hi, I love you, even if it was, you know, like on Signal or any of these other little pretend like wannabe encrypted apps, that would still be written in plain text, right? Well, encryption means written in ciphertext. And so instead of having it this read dark flower or I love you, it would be a sequence of numbers, symbols, and letters that correspond to that in a kind of algorithmic encryption scheme, right? So it would be written in ciphertext. That is what DERO brings to the table. On top of that, DERO, for those of you that are crypto-minded and interested in privacy coins and interested in to see why DERO might be the one for you, you know, Monero uses, I think they're up to like 16 ring signatures. Well, DERO has 256 that they use on their encrypted ciphertext. And Pirate Chain uses ZK snarks. DERO has created rocket bulletproofs, which you don't even have to decrypt the data to create the bulletproof. So that's just like unheard of technology, right? So along with a whole bunch of other things that are very technical. And I'm going to slowly build my way up to those more techie things. Right now, I want to keep it kind of like very intro level. So why DERO, right? DERO protects your privacy at the highest levels. Now, some people could say, oh, well, what if the government, you know, or whoever the powers that were just decrypted that encryption scheme? Well, it's a different encryption scheme per transaction. So on DERO, you have the ability to not just send money, but send messages. So let's say I sent you 0.001 DERO with a little message that said, hey, this is my address. And I didn't want anybody to see that information. Well, in order for anybody to decrypt that actual thing, it would take around 30 years for just that one message, let alone every single transaction and every single message and every single smart contract interaction on DERO blockchain. So I think you're starting to get the power or get the feel of the power of DERO. Furthermore, DERO's developers captain is working on quantum resistance. Right now, it would take around 30 years to decrypt one transaction with a quantum computer or a supercomputer. Well, now their whole focus right now is quantum resistance, which would mean that you couldn't even crack it with those computers. And that's because the developers of DERO, they don't just think like within the next couple of years or decades, they think in terms of longevity, which is very applicable to me in terms of the world, like the age of Aquarius, right? So they want to build a currency that can truly battle and replace all of the other ones that had problems, right? So the problem with cash is inflation and this infinite printing, right? Like the powers that were can just print ad nauseum, ad infinitum, any amount of number, any amount of cash that they want. They can just print any amount of dollar that they want and keep going, which continuously degrades the value of cash. Well, DERO or crypto does solve that, right? But every other crypto did not solve the problem of fungibility. And at Fungibility 101, when you have a certain amount of something, it has to always like $1 will always equal $1. That's fungible. What happens in Bitcoin is one Bitcoin won't always equal one Bitcoin because you could have a dirty Bitcoin. What would be a dirty Bitcoin? Let's say you were involved in some kind of like drug trafficking or something like that. Well, that Bitcoin was involved with that. Let's say it wasn't even your Bitcoin that did that. You just happened to buy that Bitcoin that once upon a time was involved in some drug trafficking incident. Well, guess what? That Bitcoin's no good here anymore. Why? Because there's centralized RPC API providers like Alchemy and Infura, which we'll get into maybe later. But my point is that it's not fungible because one unit does not equal one unit. And that's because of the surveillance aspect, right? $1 in cash will always be $1 in cash. One DERO will always be one DERO. Why? Because you cannot surveil it. So there's no such thing as a dirty DERO, except if you're talking about the podcast, the Daily Dirty DERO with Apollo, which I recommend. So there's no such thing as a dirty DERO. It's always going to be fungible. Now that's extremely important when it comes to talking about solving the problems and solutions that we're creating for our world of finance and how we're going to exchange goods on the same metric and rubric. So not only does DERO solve both the problems for infinite printing because it's capped, there will never be more than 20.4 million DERO, period. There will never be more, which means that the more and more people onboard onto DERO, the value of DERO is only going to go up. Now let's move to some of the more practical implications and applications on DERO. DERO is a private smart contract platform, which, similar to Ethereum or Polygon or whatever, you have the ability to create smart contracts, combine those with DERO services, and essentially you have a way for creating ways to automate and regulate and govern your own contracts, which a smart contract is just a contract that usually you would have maybe written that with law, but now you're just writing it in code, which is amazing because it puts the power of smart contracts or contracts between you and me, right? If I want to make a contract with you that every time if you want to invest in me with this, and every time I make a sale, well, guess what? Like, I can do that with a smart contract, and it would be trustless because it's written into the code, and you can guarantee that when you donate to this fund, you're going to always get that predetermined value in that smart contract automatically. It's great for me because, hey, I don't got to do the work. I don't got to do calculations. I just have to write it once and it's automated. Amazing. So it's going to give us a lot of power to cut out the middlemen. We're cutting out banks. We're cutting out like escrows. We're cutting out lawyers, even government. Oh goodness, they would hate that, right? And we're doing it in a way that preserves privacy, which preserves human dignity. It doesn't feel good to be surveilled, does it? It doesn't feel good at all. It's not natural. It's not human, especially when we know that these people that we had trusted with our data to do the right things have been doing the absolute wrong things and perverting humanity's very core elements and essence by getting us to do things that we wouldn't normally do. So smart contracts paired with services, the implications for this is massive. It's really incredible what we have to do. And if you're interested in learning more about this, I encourage you to check out my talk at Anarchapulco. And that is on my YouTube channel here. I believe it's just Kalina Lux at Anarchapulco. So why is DERO so groundbreaking and important? I think we covered the bases, right? It's going to protect us. It's going to protect us from all of the surveillance. Furthermore, we can communicate. If we have access to the internet, do you know that everything that goes through a browser essentially is being tracked and surveilled? Well, guess what? If I run my own node and you run your own node, we can interact through the blockchain completely private. All we really need is some internet signal. And one day I look forward to the day where we don't even need that. We have our own solutions, and I don't know what those are yet, but I know that they're coming. So we just got to wait, sit tight. So that happens, right? So I encourage you guys to look into DERO. And I think that especially for our communities, those of us that we believe in the evolution of our species by way of the sovereignty of the individual. That's the motto of Aquarius. Essentially, you could sum up the whole theme of Aquarius in this one sentence: unification of the collective via sovereignty and privacy of the individual, right? So we can't unify unless our sovereignty is and our privacy is protected. So DERO really falls in line with all those values. And I'm very excited to be learning about DERO and to be a part of this journey in its infancy. Yes, we are a small market cap. I believe right now we're at like 89 or something like that. We've got 13 million circulating and 20.4 maximum supply. So I think that equates to like a roughly 90 million market cap, which I don't know much about what that means, but if might be in a crypto and that might mean something to you. I personally, I'm not into DERO for the financial gain. I'm into it for the what it brings, the utility case that it protects my privacy. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, thank you so much for checking out this little intro into DERO video. It's a short episode on the portal here. And if you want, I encourage you guys to start learning and get involved. Of course, you can join my Discord, which is like a very gentle step from the world of spirituality, off-grid living, anarchy in general, natural law, into the world of DERO. It's like a nice little bridge. And eventually you can join things like the community Discord server or the DERO project server officially itself. There's going to be lots and lots of exciting things coming up in DERO. I cannot wait to tell you guys more about that. But just a brief summary, a little brief overview of what we've got going on so far. Yes, we have our own decentralized private DEX, which bridges assets from Ethereum and other places directly over to DERO. You can swap tokens. We have our own NFT marketplace, which Terra Illuma is on there, and we are very, very, very close to selling out. And I am grateful to all of you who have supported my little project, DERO Illuma. Here we are. There we go. Some DERO Illuma is right there. And of course, my new project, Dark Flower, which is going to be on the MS1 Artificer standard. So as an NFA, and these are guided meditations narrated by yours truly. Very, very excited about that. We have that NFA and NFT marketplaces on Dreams and DERONFTs.com. We have a private GoFundMe, which can't be censored, stopped, governed, etc., called privateislands.fund, where you can fundraise there in a way where you're not going to be shut down or censored. We have Airbnb, which is mind-boggling, which I am very pleased to announce that Tempest Aquaria is now officially on Airbnb. I'm very, very excited about that. Island Alchemy Sanctuary, which is my other Airbnb on the coast, is also featured on that. We are amongst, I think, the first on that platform. And yeah, so stay tuned. Many, many more exciting things are in the works. I am personally just absolutely thrilled at all of the things and opportunities. DERO has changed my life. The community is beautiful and blissful. And yeah, if you feel inspired to go and get involved, you're always welcome to join me in my Discord server. The link is in the description below, or check out my websites, templesaquaria.com or terrailluma.com, and coming soon, darkflower.io. All right, you guys, much, much love, and I will catch you in the next episode.